full button as well. And there we are. Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone.
Morning, Jaff. Morning,
good
everybody.
morning, Steve. It is Friday, the 11th of December. And, Steve, it's Christmas jumper day. Whoop, whoop,
Yes.
whoop, whoop.
My
Christmas jumper
shirt
day.
on, look, it's kind of red. Huh? Pretty good. Makes you think
Good
of
morning,
Christmas.
Tony. Good morning.
Morning,
We
guys.
have our
Hello, Tony.
guest with us, Tony Cook. Welcome. Someone who has been following our journey, our adventures over the last few months. So thanks for joining us on this special December kind of episode. I was just saying, Tony, today is Christmas jumper day. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And we've clearly got into the spirit. And Steve.
Mine's an inner Christmas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, fab. That's good to know. Anyway, welcome to everyone, and welcome to also Adele, who's joining us. Oh, we've got 3 people watching, and one of them isn't even Tony. So look at that. How wonderful is that? That means there's 4 people
Hi, everybody.
watching now. So Tony, welcome. Thank you for coming along. We just thought it'd be nice for you to, say hey to the folks. If people have watched every episode as diligently as you have, they'll see that you're quite an active contributor to our sessions, which is really nice. And just for you to share your story and kind of how you got into this wonderful world of change and supporting people through change and challenge. But first, we'll start as we always do, with a little activity from you, Steve.
Well, yeah. Bearing in mind that I'm not a yoga instructor at all, but I've been scouring the internet for little armchair yoga things. The guy who trained Jaffer, myself, and Tony as well, I think, Chris Grimsley, has kind of developed this thing. He calls it Zoom Out. So after loads of time spent on Zoom, he needs a bit of Zoom out time, and it got me thinking and doing a bit of research for myself. So I've got 4 or 5 little exercises that you can do just sitting there in your chairs and join in and see how you go with them. The other thing is, of course, you can take them and do them whenever you need them. Okay, so first of all I'd like you to do is sit straight with your feet on the floor, and if you put your hands on your knees, that would be great. And then breathing in, all I want you to do is arch your back backwards, rolling your shoulders back as well, and your head as well as far as you can go, and just hold that for a moment. And then just roll forward so that your chin touches your chest, rounding your spine, dropping your chin on your chest, and then back again. So the idea is, as you're rolling back, you're breathing in, and then as you roll forward, so that your head touches your chest, you're breathing out. And again, rolling back, and then rolling forward. Okay, good. So sitting straight again with your back in your chair. I couldn't believe this was yoga, but anyway, apparently it is. It just seems so simple. So all I want you to do is relax your shoulders and let your hands and arms just dangle loosely at your sides. And just find yourself in that spot where you're anchored to the chair. And then all I want you to do as you inhale is lift your arms up straight, keeping them parallel, looking forward. And if you want to, just stretch up as far as is comfortable. The key thing here, of course, is don't overdo it. Just go as far as is comfortable, but notice when you can feel that stretch. And then bring them down again. Inhale and bring them up. And down again. And the last time, bringing them up. And down again. Great stuff. This time, this next exercise, we're going to kind of combine the one that we've just done with a little bit of an extra twist. So this time, what I'd like you to do, so if you're sitting straight again, back in the chair, relaxing, and your shoulders and hands straight down at your sides. And what I'd like you to do now is just very gently bend forward over your legs and let your arms come down as far as you can. If you can touch the floor, that's great. If they can't, that's okay as well. And then come back into the sitting position and raise your arms again into that upward stretch. So you're doing a forward stretch where you're bending down with your head over your knees and then coming back up into an upward stretch as well. Okay. Right, so back into that straight sitting position with your back, with your spine long. Okay, relaxing your shoulders a little bit as well. And what I'd like you to do is dead simple. Just bring your right ankle to rest on your left thigh if you can do. If you can't, that's fine as well. So get it as close to the knee as possible and just notice there's a little bit of a stretch into your thighs and your knees. And if you're comfortable doing this, just bend forward a little bit as well, so that it's as comfortable as it can be for you. So please don't force anything. So for some people, just sitting there with the ankle on their knee is fine. If you can get a bit of a stretch in there as well, it'll work a little bit on your lower back and into your thighs as well. Okay, just hold it there for 3 or 4 breaths. And when you're ready, just sit up straight again. Take your left leg and put it on your right knee. And repeat. And what I've found is, and it might be the same for you, that one side is better than the other at this. So on my left, with my left leg on my right knee, I can't quite get down as far as the other way around. But that's okay. I'm not going to force it. Okay, and then coming back up and sitting up straight. So back to that easy sitting position. And just take a few moments with your eyes closed and your hands on your lap. And notice any changes in your body and your mind. And just give some attention to your breathing as well. And as you're doing that, we're going to transition into Jaff's story for the morning.
Great, thank you, Steve. So this is a story called The Disease of Being Busy by a gentleman called Omid Safi. In many Muslim cultures, when you want to ask people how they're doing, you ask in Arabic, Kayfa halik? In Persian, Hali shuma chetro? In Urdu, Kya hal hai? How is your hal? What is this hal that you inquire about? It is a state of one's heart. In reality, we are asking, how is your heart doing at this very moment, at this breath? When I ask you, how are you? That is really what I want to know. I'm not asking how many things are on your to-do list, nor asking how many items are in your inbox. I want to know how your heart is doing at this very moment. So tell me your heart is joyous. Tell me your heart is aching. Tell me your heart is sad. Tell me your heart craves a human touch. Examine your own heart, examine your own soul, and then tell me something about your heart and your soul. Tell me that you remember that you're still a human being, not just a human doing. Tell me you're more than just a machine, checking off items from your to-do list. Have that conversation, that glance, that touch. Have a healing conversation, one filled with grace and presence. Put your hand on my arm, look me in the eye and connect with me for 1 second. Tell me something about your heart and awaken my heart. help me remember that I too am a full and complete human being, a human being who also craves a human touch. So, what a wonderful, wonderful start to this very special edition of Tools for Living Your Life. And thank you for that, Steve. That was really, really
Yeah,
lovely.
nice story.
I've always thought yoga needs to be one of those where you need to stretch every single muscle and you need to do all these contorted positions, and something as simple as that armchair yoga, it's so insightful, isn't it? And then that story, which again was this whole episode was seamlessly put together. So that story I just thought was a wonderful fit to what we were just doing there.
Yeah,
And
especially at
what
a busy time of year.
absolutely, and what this whole these last 14 episodes have all been about, about that human touch, about sharing some of those stories. And what better man to share some of those stories than Mr. Tony Cook? So welcome again, good sir, and thank you so much for coming on and being part of this episode. I think me and Steve are just so thrilled to have you here. So just to get Tony a little bit shy and to get him absolutely ready for the spotlight, I'm just going to tell everyone how I met Tony, and then Steve, if you want to do the same, and then it'd be really nice, Tony, for you just to tell us kind of what you do and all the amazing stuff that you've done throughout your life. So when the pandemic hit, I think we were all feeling quite anxious, rightly so, about what the future would bring. And a good friend of mine and Steve's, a wonderful chap known by Alan Johnson, who's also an NLP trainer, decided that actually what he would do, just so that NLPers could connect more of the time, with that he would set up these Sunday morning sessions. So Sunday morning sessions, allowing us to come together for a couple of hours just to work through some NLP questions and chat about all things NLP. And it was there that I met you, Tony. So a really, really lovely fella, just someone that embodied for me everything to do with NLP and change work, and just so genuine and so pleasant and so knowledgeable. I think that was one of the things I was like, oh my gosh, this man knows so much about so many things. It's incredible. So and since then we've connected, and it's been great to have you, and we've attended together lots of different stuff. And what about you, Steve? How do you know Tony? I
Pretty
feel like
much the
this.
same, actually,
I
I
feel
think,
like this
Tony.
is your life. I feel like
Yes.
this is your life, Tony. So sorry, Steve. Go on.
No, I was going to say it's pretty much the same, I think, Tony. I think the thing that struck me was I think we were in a breakout room discussing one of these questions that Alan had set us, and we were having this discussion, and you reached down to one side and you said, "There's a different way of looking at this," and you produced this huge textbook on neuroscience, and you said something like, yeah, I'm kind of working my way through this, and I can't remember if it was a course you were doing or if this is how you do bedtime reading, which could be as well. So I kind of clearly remembered that, and I thought, and what you did in that discussion was, with that background in neuroscience, you put just a little different slant on it, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. I can't for the life, if you pin me down now and ask me what exactly what it was, I can't put my hand on my heart and say, oh yeah, we were discussing about something, but it was some aspect of NLP, and you put a neuroscience look on it, twist on it, that I thought, oh wow, that is dead interesting. And then I started paying attention.
Well, Tony, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us how you got involved in NLP and the stuff that you do, so that people know a little bit more about you.
Yeah, but it was great meeting you guys during this long year of pandemic, and that's been a big part of my recent journey, because I haven't been seeing clients or anything during this time. I was just ready to go with some new clients, and then this came, and I just said, I can't do this. And then discovered that my son's partner was expecting a baby. This is during the pandemic, and so I took to self-isolating in a big way. I mean, I'm 73 as well, so I'm in that supposed group. And so I've been quite strict about not mixing with anybody because I wanted to be kind of healthy for the baby, which came a week ago, just before my birthday, which has been wonderful, a wonderful granddaughter. And doing the sessions with Alan Johnson and meeting you guys was the best thing about the pandemic, definitely, apart from having a granddaughter. Yeah,
I was going to say, be careful. You never know who's watching, Tony.
obviously. No, this was like before that came about, because we weren't sure what was going to happen, whether we're still going to be in a pandemic. And I realized what it did for me was help me not only to keep getting back in touch with the exploration of what NLP means to different people, but also just connecting and engaging with a whole new bunch of friends who I haven't actually met in real life. It's all been virtual, but it feels kind of more real than real because of what we are actually working on and engaged with all the time. So I live in Plymouth in the southwest, which is a wonderful city. I live by the sea. And when I started doing my master practitioner with Chris Grimsley in 2000, or it might have been 1999 when we started, I can't remember. It was the first master practitioner that Chris Grimsley did. I set well-formed outcomes, a compelling future, and it involved listening to Frank Sinatra and sitting by the sea. And then I moved down here. I moved to Lyme Regis about 15 years ago, nearly. And I realized when I was sitting on the Harbour Inn veranda that my well-formed outcomes had been absolutely achieved. You know, this is where I was. It was amazing. And that's what happens with NLP quite often. You kind of do things and then it slips out of your front conscious mind and it slips into part of your kind of whole system. And then suddenly it comes and it makes total sense, right? So my first training was to be a therapeutic counsellor, which I did with Oasis Human Relations. Bryce Taylor, a wonderful guy who set up, was the director of that organisation. He came over to Lancashire. I'm not from Lancashire, but I lived there for 26 years. It's a long story.
And I have to say, Tony, you lived in the best part of Lancashire. So me and Steve often get quite competitive about this. You know, he lived in sunny Blackburn, Steve. So you know, clearly that tells you something.
From where Jaffer lives now, I used to visit friends in the same street that he lives in, which is extraordinary. It's like a full circle. It is.
That's fantastic.
And I worked at Blackburn College and they set up a counselling service for, because they'd become a tertiary college and all the 16-year-old school leavers had to go to that college rather than whatever else. And so they needed a pastoral care system. And so I became I helped set up a counselling service and I'd done some counselling training. I wasn't fully qualified, but I'd done quite a lot of training. And then I got the opportunity to do a diploma. And from that, I then started to make contact with Chris Grimsley and the NLP that was really just starting off in Lancashire. I did my very first training with a woman called Fran Burgess. I did a whole day on excellence, which really set me up for years, actually. The stuff I learned on that day is still with me. It was so powerful. Wonderful woman, wonderful training. And then I did the practitioner. Then we had a practice year in between. And I said to Chris, I want to do a master. If not, I'm going to have to go somewhere else. And he said, oh, right, then we'll see what we can do. And then, of course, we had this wonderful group. And I had a practice, obviously, as a counsellor in Blackburn College. I went through a lot of massive changes in my personal life, my personal circumstances, which culminated with me getting divorced. I gave up my full-time job and I kept 2 days a week so that I could do the counselling and do the counselling training in the college. And I set up my own practice, which was very hairy at the time because I didn't really have a client base, but gradually, word of mouth, which is the best way to do it. People who'd known me in the college referred people who they knew. And then I got a job. I was still self-employed, but I got a job with Lancashire Constabulary as one of their councillors for East Lancashire. They split up into different sections, the whole county, and I was the councillor for East Lancashire, and I got hundreds of clients from the police themselves, and I think I probably used NLP with every client that I saw, and that was amazing because I was quite new to being, you know, a sole operator, and I was working from my home. And NLP was still, even though I'd been studying it for 3 years, it was still kind of new to me. It wasn't like a whole part of who I was then. And what happened during that process is it became embedded within me to a point where I knew with every client who came, they only had limited number of sessions to come, and it was supposed to be mostly work-related stress, but there was all sorts of other stuff came in as well. And I had, the most important thing I learned from NLP initially was actually about building rapport, was about calibrating what is actually happening with the client as they come into the room, and using all of that massive information that kind of floods your system to then start to just gently ask a couple of questions before we did our kind of initial assessment. And they would always say things like, "Are you a mind reader? What? How did you know that?" And I'm going, how did I know that? Well, it was kind of pretty obvious. You were carrying something here that I just think was really very, very pronounced, you know, and I just thought I'd ask about what it was. And very often, there were mostly men who came, and they didn't particularly want to see a counsellor, I don't think, but they knew they felt that they ought to because it was part of the deal. And they, within the first session, they just switched completely and realized that this is what they wanted. And again, I put that down to usually and very often, and I didn't have a formula for this, but very often during the second session, we would look more closely at what they really wanted to get out of it. So I was using well-formed outcomes, and again, I was looking at their belief system and what was actually getting in the way that was stopping them achieving what they wanted. So I used to do organic belief change work, which was massively important. And not one client ever objected to standing in my kind of practice room at home and walking round these imaginary places on the floor. And these were very pragmatic, no-nonsense Lancashire policemen. And they were just completely swept away by it, and they loved it, and they were going, God, how, they were just kind of speechless with the whole process. And I was thinking about another main thing that was going on. A lot of them were experiencing trauma. Not necessarily full-blown PTSD. I had done a lot of training around PTSD. I did work with a wonderful woman called Babette Rothschild years ago, because I knew that somehow or other this was going to be a big part of my work. And I specialised in working with trauma. And even though I only had like 8 sessions with these clients, I didn't kind of hold back, because I thought, we've only got this time, and NLP can bring about change in a very rapid way. And it's not just about bringing about change, it's actually dealing with the fact that you've actually brought about change, which is the most important part of the therapy. Yeah. Because very often people think, oh, we'll do some change work and then that's fine, then you've changed, and isn't it okay? But actually, you have to then live with the fact that everything has changed, the way that you see everything has changed, and you've got to somehow or other find another way of being at peace with that. So doing the trauma work, I at the time, and I didn't know Alan Johnson then, and I didn't know integral eye movement therapy, which is a very powerful tool for working with trauma. But I used timeline therapy, and it was massively successful with the people I used it with. I didn't use it with every client. There were some clients I couldn't do trance work with because they were too much on the edge. So having to work with the ecology, and the ethics and the safety aspects of working with NLP. I had to judge that myself. I'd sometimes think, next week I'm going to do this with this client, and next week they'd come along and their state had changed, and they weren't actually in a receptive mode, but they weren't in a mode that was going to be safe to do this work. So that's always a big issue for me. Working with this kind of life-changing stuff is like, how safe do I feel in myself? Well, I've been through massive changes in my life always. I worked out the other day that I've moved house 21 times since I left home originally. And so I'm thinking, yeah, I think I do actually embrace change. I'd quite like to settle down a little bit now, but who knows? I mean, I don't think this is my final home. I'm kind of going to be moving again at some point, maybe. I don't know. So that timeline work was always amazing. Working with different parts, how people saw themselves as really torn and really split, and how to integrate that kind of coming together of different parts of their experience. And then the other massively big influence for me was really, I've been a trainer of people who wanted to do therapeutic counselling. I did that in Blackburn. I did that in Plymouth up until last year as well. I also worked in London. I did a training for working with psychosexual health, and I taught the diploma as well. I was part of the team teaching that diploma. I wasn't the main teacher, but I was part of that team. And what I realized when I've looked back on all my training is that NLP has informed the way that I do my training. And it has massively helped the way that I train, because I can read a room really quickly, and I can pick up on what is happening with individuals in that group very rapidly. And I don't always act on it, but actually it really helps me. And if people are struggling with their learning in some way, I've then intervened with an NLP strategy to help them. I'm not teaching them NLP. I'm using an NLP strategy to help them as learners. And that's, I think, has made some of my training really powerful for some of those individuals who felt that they were unable to learn or to write an essay or to read a book properly. I felt that they've developed massively through the interventions that I used from NLP. So lately, as Steve mentioned earlier, I have been involved with studying neuroscience. I initially did a training in neuroscience for a year, which wasn't a certified one, but it was it's this. And it's Therapy in the Time of Neuroscience. This is a book which is basically of the course that I did with a guy called Peter Afford, who knows the huge amount. He's not a neuroscientist, he's a therapist, but he's studied and he's actually encapsulated some of the core themes in neuroscience and in therapy. And I've felt driven by this because I find it so fascinating, because again, with NLP, for me, it's about how things are happening, right? It's not why, it's how they're happening. And with neuroscience, it's massively about how things are happening. And I'm just loving that. And I've been doing that for 5 years now, because after I'd finished the training, Peter set up a reading group. And so we read this massive tome, which is the one I showed Steve, I think, which is
scary.
Which is just, luckily
You're going to do it again. You're going to scare me again. Look at that. That's huge.
I know, and look how big it is, and it's
I'm guessing it's not an easy read.
It's by Louis Cozzolino. He writes really well. It's not hard to read.
Really?
It's not hard to read. He's really readable. And the latest one is all about, this is by Sapolsky. This is all about human behavior and how the brain is working with there. And this is the most readable science book ever. It is really funny. Yeah. So, I mean, I read these books, I make notes, and I can't retain all the knowledge, but I don't have to, because I've just got a sense of what is actually going on. I'm no longer afraid of it. So I've used NLP on myself for the last 20 odd years because I've had to, because how did I get through stuff? After my divorce, I had a girlfriend who was an NLP master practitioner, and she used to practice on me, and I was going, oh, stop it, And then I got, hooked, and then I started to do the training myself. And then when I got the handouts and stuff from Chris, she'd come to my flat and say, that handout you've got on there, could I just borrow it? Because she'd done training with Robert Dilts in California, and she didn't have any handouts or anything. I don't know how that happened, but the stuff she had wasn't kind of usable on a one-to-one basis. And she really loved that simple, clear style that Chris had of actually making it accessible and work really well.
Get the feeling that just coming back to Robert Dilts, I'm a big fan of his work, actually. I think his work on beliefs is fantastic. Yeah. But I think he kind of monetizes his training to the nth degree, perhaps. So those handouts, I don't know what she was training him, if it was the NLP practitioners, I don't know. The book the book he read, the book he wrote on beliefs was basically a transcript of a course. So that might include the handouts as well. Yeah. But it's funny how people do it differently, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yes. And I think it's one of those things where I don't know about you, Steve, but I could totally, that is just amazing. And I think that the stuff that you've been through and that whole embodying of NLP. So I think, often perhaps any of us who start off on this journey of supporting people through what I call change and challenge, do it because we want to support people. And actually, I believe the best practitioners of this kind of stuff are people who first and foremost apply it to themselves, and it's there in their very embodiment, and they're keeping, they're doing it themselves. It was interesting. I've got this little app on my phone called Time Hop, and Time Hop goes back through your social media account. So it links up to your social media accounts, and it goes back through your social media accounts and says, on this day 8 years ago this happened, and on this day 6 years ago this is what you posted and whatnot. And a couple of days ago, I was going through my Time Hop, and I must have posted some on Facebook, and this was 10 or so years ago. And there were three words to it. Two words to it. 2 words to my status on that day 10 years ago on Facebook, which was hates change. And that was it. So it was very much my status for that day was I hate change. And I look back and I thought, what is that all about? Because I've actually, I think I've dealt with change pretty well over the years, but I clearly was in that mind frame. And I think what you've talked about there, Tony, is that NLP allows you to have a different approach to life. You know, your mind almost opens up to all the different possibilities out there. So whereas one point I probably found change quite difficult and quite unfamiliar, well, hate's a really strong word, isn't it?
Well,
Hate's a really, really strong word. And for me,
yeah.
it was just interesting that is something that I posted 10 years ago on Facebook. And then like you, Tony, you know, I've been through a divorce and I had to spend several months out in down south, as we like to call it up here, down south. But you know, that was filled with change. That was filled with change. And so it was just incredible to just look back at that one status and to think, wow. Sorry, Steve, were you going to say something there?
Yeah, I've got a question because I'm dead curious now about those two words. So, oh, Jaff, you're frozen.
I'm just going to
Don't worry,
move
I could
some machine out in the road,
Okay.
making such a terrible racket.
I could still hear you, Steve. So just keep going. I could still hear you. Yeah.
So I was wondering, you know, when you saw those two words, did they act as some kind of anchor back to that state of hating change? Were you able to sort of access that?
What I'm just going to do, Steve, is just turn my camera off if I can.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, let's have a look. Can you still hear me?
I'm hating this change.
Can you still hear me, Steve?
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Fab. As long as you can hear me, that's the important thing. It might just be that I freeze every so often. But hey, that's never a bad thing, I think. That's never a bad thing when I freeze. So there we are. I've turned the camera off, so hopefully that should be better. So it didn't, bizarrely, Steve. It didn't. In actual fact, it amused me massively. And I was sat there thinking, what was it at that point in my life? So this must have been December 2010. And I was trying to recollect what was happening at that point in my life for me to say that I hated and I couldn't recollect anything. And like I said, I was just amused thinking, my gosh, how times can change even in a decade. to go from hating change, which, like I said, I think, you know, NLP, that the L of NLP is language. You know, how do we put words to the experiences that we're experiencing? Hate's quite a strong word.
It's
You know,
very scary. Change is very scary. People are
mm.
very scared about change because obviously you are moving into the unknown. You don't know what that's going to be like. And then that's why it's important to support people, not just before or during, but after the change. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we've had a couple of comments come in. So Adil just said, so I think this was 27 minutes ago, so it must have been right at the start of our session, and he wrote, "This is deep for a Friday morning." Well, that's what we do here on Tools for Living Your Life. Irrespective of the time of day, we continue to go deep. So that's us. And then a wonderful compliment for you, Tony, which I think anyone who watches this back will absolutely agree. So Adil just said, "Tony, I'm in love with you. I was so mesmerized about your story." So again, thank you very much for sharing that. And Samantha just said, exactly, how can you be a model for your clients if you want modeling? Hey, it's almost as though we've gone full circle there. NLP and modeling. Who'd have thunk it, eh? Who'd have thunk it? So, Steve, we've heard Tony's kind of story and kind of his journey in NLP, which got me thinking, and this is a question for you both, actually. And I know, Steve, you've talked about this in previous sessions, but it'd just be good as a timely reminder. What if someone said to you, "What is NLP?" So we've heard Tony talk passionately about NLP. Me and you have spent the last 13 episodes talking about different aspects of NLP. But if there's people tuning in, of which there are several currently, which is always good, what is it? What are you talking about right now? What is NLP? So Steve, if I can ask you first,
thanks
and
very much.
not in terms of the dictionary definition or all that. What is it for you personally? What is it?
Well, I kind of got caught up in the name, really. I always come back to this, that the name, if they were inventing it in Lancashire today, they would never call it NLP, I don't think. They'd call it something like run your head better, or, do you know, give your head a wobble, or something like that. Do you know what I mean? But we're saddled with this 1970s Californian psychobabble, as I think of it. So for me, because I'm a trainer and I need bums on seats to pay my bills, and quite often that's the starting point for people that say, what's that?
Yeah.
So I have to unpick that, and what I've done is try to unpick it in a way that kind of makes sense to me, which is all about the 3 parts of the title. So what does neuro mean? Well, it means how we experience our lives through our neurology, our 5 senses. What's the linguistic bit? Well, that's about how we use language to describe the experiences that we're having to ourselves and other people. And the programming is just the habits that we get into when we do that. So if I can simplify it down to that, so that kind of makes sense to me, because all of those 3 things resonate for me in the way that they fit together. So the way I figure it is that if it kind of makes sense to me, then hopefully it'll make sense to other people, but at least it will give them an opening so that they don't feel that they've got to have a PhD in psychology in order to kind of approach this, the models and techniques. Because actually, unlike the title, a lot of the models and techniques people say, and I'm sure perhaps Tony, you've come across this in the training as well, and say, "Oh, I do this anyway. This is just common sense." So another way of NLP, describing NLP, is kind of like applied common sense, and so that's the way that it can. I make sense of it. So hopefully it makes sense for other people. But like I say, it's also about breaking ice and kind of building that rapport.
I would agree with all of that, Steve. Yeah. And also I would also add something like, for me, it's like it's another spoke in the wheel of kind of experience and of life, in fact, because I've used many different systems to help me and to help my clients, not just NLP. And when I first started to think about NLP, people were very crusading about it and kept saying things like, this is the only thing you'll ever need and it'll be fine. And if you just do this, your life will be fantastic and everything's going to be hunky-dory. And I was going, whoa, actually, I'm stepping back from this a bit. And then when I realized that it was actually common sense and that it wasn't, that it was actually could work in tangent with lots of other things as well, you know, that actually it could be integrated into my therapeutic model. It didn't just have to be just NLP. If you do NLP, that's all you need. You're going to need other things as well. You know, it's like actually being kind of quite rational about it and using your common sense about it, using your own common sense about NLP as well. It's a wonderful, wonderful system for which models wonderful systems. Yeah.
And I think that was my thing, Tony, was knowing that it's a framework. So that's kind of what when people come to me and go, well, what is it? I'll often use Steve's kind of analogy there that he's kindly shared, and then talk about it being a framework. And actually, I remember going through life going, I wonder why I do this and Tony does that. And yet we're in the same setting, but we're doing it slightly differently. Or I wonder why one of my friends does this and another one of my friends does that. And yet we still remain friends because they seem to be quite opposites in terms of either the thinking or whatever it might be. And what NLP finally did was to give me a framework and go, that's why. I can now start to articulate and bring to my conscious awareness what was happening. Because often I knew, probably like all 3 of us, often I knew that all humans are individual and all humans are unique. And yet there seem to be certain patterns. So when we think about timelines, for example, there seem to be certain patterns that humans had collectively. So some people were so members of my family, some members of my family can be really, really early to stuff. Some members of my family can be really, really, really late to stuff, or late in inverted commas. And I was always curious, going, what is it? Is it our upbringing? Is it our culture? Is it all this kind of stuff? And finally, NLP just gave me a way to understand all of that. I went, wow, that's what it is. That's what it is. That, it's just us making sense of the world and how we need to make sense of it. So that was great. So thank you both for that. So as we're moving into 2021, and this is just a bit of a plug for us all, really, bearing in mind that there are some wonderful people watching. What are your plans for this kind of stuff? So, Tony, you mentioned in your story when you were recollecting about how you got to where you are right now, that you've had to put a pause on some of the stuff that you were perhaps doing. Is it your intention to start some of that stuff, to start perhaps even seeing clients remotely, or to do stuff? And some other stuff you might not have thought about. But if I was to put you on the spot and say, what are you thinking about for 2021 in terms of getting this wonderful stuff out there to people? What would you say?
What I'm actually doing at the moment is a bit stop-start, but I'm actually writing. I'm writing my memoir, and I'm writing it because my son's partner is interested in the family history. And she wants to know for the grandchild, where we all came from. So I'm writing that. And of course, it brings in loads of different strands of my life, and especially about my therapeutic journey as well. So that's one thing I'm going to continue doing. But this is the stop, start, continuing. What are you going to stop? What are you going to continue? What are you going to begin? And also, there's some machine outside that is deafening me. I don't know if you can hear it here, but anyway.
We can't know, yeah.
Oh, good. I'm going to hopefully do some one-to-one work, but I'm mostly interested in groups, really.
Fab.
I'm not going to be an NLP trainer, but I would like to have a small kind of either like a supervision group or a personal development group. That has been my plan. I took a break before the pandemic. I took a break from work, and I've still carried on my supervision, and we worked out this plan, and now it's all got put on hold. But I would like to go back to that plan at some point during the year, but it's got to be safe. I will not start working remotely with people who I haven't met in real life, I'm afraid. That's why I've been without work, because I really want to have that kind of engagement on a kind of visceral level. But maybe that'll change, because I've actually been able to engage with you guys without having met you. So, maybe. So a little bit of group work would be good. But my main thing at the moment is writing.
Fab. Thanks for sharing that, Tony. And what about yourself, Steve?
What about you, Jeff?
Well, let's come to you
first.
Oh, Steve, look at that! You got in there before I did. So I'm really delighted that I'm going off to do my NLP Train the Trainers next March with your lovely partner, Steve, Catherine. So that's going to be delightful. And I've made a commitment to people like Tony, who have been regular attenders of a monthly practice session that I run, that I will commit to doing them for the next 12 months. So that'll be really exciting. And then I hope to continue building up my my coaching business. It's that thing that you said, Tony. I agree with that. I think word of mouth is so important. And I know Adil's watching right now, so Adil, get out there and tell people how good I am, because that'll bring me more clients. But no, so genuinely, it's just about And I think the final thing for me is just continuing to embody it, because that is so important, isn't it? And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm drawn to you, fine gentlemen, is because you embody it, and for me, that's what I need. I can't be with people who, and we know them, and some of them, unfortunately, are big in the NLP world, who can perhaps talk the talk, but not necessarily walk the walk. So for me, it's about continuing to embody NLP as far as possible, and being surrounded by like-minded folk.
Yeah, you do a good job, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Steve. And what about yourself? What's the plan for 2021?
Well, there's two plans. There's kind of like a big chunk plan, which is to get mental hygiene onto the national curriculum.
Fabulous.
Why wouldn't we do that? Because one thing the pandemic has taught us is that we're fragile. We're all fragile mentally, and I just think we give our school kids so many skills that last them for their lives. So things like understanding language and being able to read and write. And I just think this is becoming more and more vital. So in order to do that, I've got involved with a guy I used to do some coaching with and some NLP with as a local head teacher. And he's involved now with something called the National Wellbeing Partnership. And he runs something called the Schools Advisory Service. So I'm doing a presentation for a group of schools on Monday morning, actually. And it's just a small step towards that idea of kind of making our school kids from day one to have some kind of emotional literacy, mental health literacy, so that they can start looking after themselves and do it in time so that, you know, it doesn't affect Tony and my careers, because we'll have retired by the time all that has played through. But you, Jaff, you're in trouble now if that comes to fruition, when that comes to fruition.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I heard yesterday that myself and partner, I've been working with a partner organisation in the Netherlands, and we've got funding through from Erasmus Plus to do 2 foundation diplomas.
Fantastic.
It was great. I've been trying for 2.5 years to get into Europe, if you like, through Erasmus Plus, and at last we've got the funding approved. So we're doing 2 foundation diplomas, one in the Netherlands and one in a country that I'd never heard of, but apparently is part of the Netherlands, and it's called Curacao, and it's on the Pacific coast of Central America. And that
fabulous.
I'm excited. Fabulous. I really am. So that's either for the end of this year, or the end of 2021, or perhaps 2022.
Fantastic.
So those are the 2 kind of big ticket things, and then supporting Kath and yourself as well, Jaff, as you go through the train the trainer stuff, because it's a long journey and it's a very intense one as well. And, you know, support will be needed, I'm guessing. I don't know.
Well, for aspiring NLP trainers, of which I'm hoping some are watching and listening to this at whatever point they may watch or listen to this, myself and Catherine and 2 other colleagues of ours, 2 other friends of ours who are doing the course together, met with our trainer, and there was one line from it that will stick with me probably until the end of the course, and probably for a long time after that, which is, this is the hardest thing you will have ever done in your life. Now, considering how young I am, that doesn't really mean a lot, but it was just that thing of, wow, you know, and it does seem really full on and really intense. And yet, though, Stephen, and hopefully you'll agree with me here, yet the benefits of that, you know, Europe and Central America and young people and children and Tony stuff with continuing working with adults and supervision and groups, and my gosh, you know, what phenomenal joy, fingers crossed, and understanding. For me, that's what it's about. It's just understanding myself and other people and how we all interlink and interrelate with each other. What a joyful thing to do. You know, what a fantastic thing to do.
Now, listen, I've been reading some stuff around. Have you heard of the hero's journey? Are you familiar with that?
I'm not. No.
It's the idea that a lot of our myths and legends and fiction, as well, are built around the idea of the central character, the hero or heroine, being called onto a mission, and the thing that makes it heroic is that, like, your training, that you're talking about, it's not easy.
Yeah.
So you've got to go through the challenges if you want to come through the other side as, if you like, the transformed Jaff. So instead of wearing Christmas jumpers, you'll be wearing like your super Jaff outfit. Do you know
Which
what I mean?
might still have a Santa Claus on it, because I think Santa's a fabulous hero. I do.
But also,
For a moment there, we were getting serious, and you just ruined it, Jaff.
Sorry, Steve. Sorry about that. I'm going to turn my camera back off because I don't think that the guys on the other side can see me anyway, and it might help in the conversation.
we're talking about, emotional and spiritual journeys, but also what I want to do this year is some physical journeys, because I've been in the same place since March. I did make a trip across to Cornwall. It's only an hour away to see my granddaughter, but this year I want to see people. I even want to come up to Lancashire, which is something I don't.
Fabulous.
Let us know.
Fabulous. I've already said that to him, Steve. I've said, you need to let us know. Steve will come down for a curry in Blackburn, and then we'll head up to Blackpool for some nice fish and chips. Jobs are good, and that's Lancashire done and dusted. That's it. Sorry, Tony, go on, please continue.
No, just to actually physically make contact with people that I'm still keeping safe, and I think we have to keep safe for the foreseeable future. And there's people who I need to embrace, really, who've been through harder times than I have in the last few months, and just keep engaging with people and mingling with people would be wonderful. Yeah, that's another big one for this year.
Cool.
For this coming year.
Well, that's a hopeful one to end on, isn't it, Jeff?
Absolutely. As always, can we thank everyone for tuning in? Huge thank you, Tony, for coming along. Huge thank you. This is something that Steve's been asking me for a number of episodes about. Can we not get someone in on the cold Jaff? Can we not bolster it a little bit with kind of guest appearances every so often and all that kind of stuff? And it's worked delightfully, as I think we all knew it would. So thank you so much for coming along, really, and for sharing your story, because I think that's such a powerful story for people to hear. Thank you to the several people who have tuned in this morning and left comments and whatnot and feedback. Thank you so much. Just a few last comments. So Marita knows the hero's journey. So Marita said, I love the hero's journey.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Which is great. So yes. So thank you.
One thing I was going to say, Jeff, I didn't, we were talking about Robert Dilts earlier.
Yes. Yep.
How influential he is in NLP. So I started reading about it, and I suddenly found that he's written a book about the hero's journey as well, from an NLP point of view.
Fantastic.
So that's on my list for Santa. If anyone's listening.
A hero fan. You see, this is what baffles me, Steve. You can't just believe in Santa when you want to. Well, you can. You can.
Yeah, of course you can.
Let's just leave it there. Let's just leave it there, everyone. Okay. Thank you so much for tuning in. Next week, we may be on we will be on a little bit later, because we have another special guest. You will all remember the wonderful Sarah Bishop, who joined me for a session while Steve was occupied elsewhere. So Sarah, who is a head teacher at a school, because school's finished next Friday, she needs to be there, but she has agreed to join us later on in the afternoon. So around 4 o'clock, I'll confirm that as soon as possible in the Facebook group. But please join us then for what will be our last episode of the year, because the following week is Christmas Day. And I did say to Steve, do you want to do something? And he went, absolutely not. No.
I'd do anything. I'd dress up for it. I would wear my Christmas jumper for you, Jeff. There you go.
Well, there we are. Shame it's not happening. Shame it's not happening. Fab. I'm just going to leave you with this last comment here from Shirley. Great to see Tony today as one of his counselling students in 2001 to 2003. He introduced us to NLP, and I'm so grateful for this, and it has helped me personally in so many ways.
There you go. That's making a difference.
So take that, Tony.
Thank
you ever so much. Have a lovely weekend, everyone. Speak to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, folks.
Bye.